Hello, everyone. Welcome to this. Can you hear us? They can, right? So after these very minor technical problems which seem to follow us, but we managed to be live online today to start this WIP session. WIP is an ongoing series we host here at Instituto. Actually, since just a few days before the pandemic hit Europe, and it became suddenly an online series throughout 2020 and 2021. And we are happy to continue the WIP series now in a hybrid format today with two guests in presence with us, Presente, project founded by Virginia de Diego. Hello, Virginia.
Hi, Paul. Hi there.
And Neighbors of Architecture, collective live from Stockholm in Sweden. Hello, and thank you for being here with us. Work in Progress is a series dedicated to sharing ongoing work, as the name already explains, work or discourses or processes that are happening on the moment. So we are interested to gather people or groups that perhaps share similar interests, perhaps never met before, which I think is the case today. So in this case, our role here as hosts is to gather people, projects, share their research, the work they produce, and builds bridges, in this case, between Porto and Stockholm. So there will be two presentations. We will start with Neighbors of Architecture, a practice and an institution founded by Bjorn, Helen Mark, and Karin Kallenberg. They produce and direct architectural cultural projects through exhibitions, publications, events, and other media. They will share with us their work. They set up a display box, a kind of glass vitrine or window on the sidewalk of Gorenstagan 95 in Stockholm, where they curate exhibitions about architecture and its related fields. So we are very interested to hear about your micro exhibition space. Your space, when I met your space in Stockholm at the end of 2020, when I spent some time in Stockholm, invited by Jaspis, I met you, and I immediately thought about the similarity between your project and Virginia's project, Presente, which is also a small or a micro display box or a shop window here in Porto, a very, very small gallery, let's say. It's an experiment where the boundaries between art and architecture and other fields and curatorial practices are intermingled and blurred. I think Virginia, I don't know if I think I mentioned to you Neighbors of Architecture, and I'm very happy that finally we managed to gather you today here. So without further ado, I would ask neighbors of architecture to share your screen to make us your presentation to.
Yes, thank you.
We'll do the same with Virginia, and after we can have some conversation, and if someone is watching online, they can ask us questions on the chat. So please.
Yes, you'll have to say if the sound breaks up or anything, but so far so good.
They can ask us questions on the chat. So please.
Yes, you have to say if the sound breaks up or anything, but so far so good.
They can ask us questions on the chat. So please.
Can you see our screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay. Hey, we're neighbors of architecture, zooming in from Stockholm. Thank you so much for the invitation, and we're looking forward to the discussion after the presentations. And it's very nice to meet you as well, Virginia. So we're based in Stockholm, and as you heard, we are both a practice and an institution, and our practice involves producing our own work, design, artwork, research, writing. And as an institution, we initiate curatorial, editorial, and other kinds of projects. And today we will talk about one of them, Monter, an architecture exhibition venue in public space. This Monter project was started as part of a research-based project called INSTITUTO, Curating Architecture on Site, which we initiated with funding from the Swedish Art Council a couple of years ago.
And this project consists of experiments with different forms of exhibition making, not only here, but in a couple other places as well, but we'll talk about this iteration today. And displaying different aspects of architecture on location, so in the actual space itself, hence the name In Situ and Creating Architecture on Site. And for us, this Monter space, which you can see here in the background at one of the opening events, this glass box over here. It's become a way of testing ideas and theoretical arguments in practice. So moving from theory to practice rather than other way around. And for instance, the common notion that exhibiting architecture is itself a kind of paradox. It's often said that it's dependent on sort of stand-in objects, modes of representation, but never the real thing. When you put architecture in a gallery, it's usually the other things that you put there, like photos or drawings or text or video or virtual reality or whatever. But what about when you are actually there? What can be said then, and how do you say it? And that's basically the question we explore when we're talking about curating architecture on site.
So the context for the Monter exhibition space is a building designed by the modernist architect Leone Geisendorf and her colleagues in the 60s. And you can see Leone here. It's located at Kungsholmen in the center of Stockholm. Nowadays, the old school building has been converted into housing, but the original exterior is still in place. It was built as a vocational high school and had a unique kind of storefront openness to it already from the outset. Students were trained in professions of healthcare, cooking, making clothes, etc., etc. The school therefore included not only classrooms, but also spaces open to the public, such as restaurants, a bakery, and a hat shop, where students sold the things they made and worked as shop attendants. The glass and concrete display case outside the main entrance was part of Geisendorf's original design. As you can see, it is standing directly next to the building, and at the same time, it's facing the street. It is small in comparison to architecture, but much bigger than a piece of furniture. As a glass vitrine, it falls into the most conventional of exhibition formats. But as a sort of gallery without walls, it also falls completely outside of those conventions. These limits and also potentials inform everything we do with the Monter project. And it helps us to think about what curating architecture on site could be, and by extension also curating architecture at large. Every exhibition we have produced here in Monter is related to this building by Geisendorf, but it's not about the building, rather the use of the situation to point towards larger questions of architecture and also questions about exhibition making.
This is the first example that we'll show, and it's a commissioned work for this space by the artist and former architect Johanna Kindahl, called Weights of Structure. And she made a kinetic sculpture out of string, weights, and electric motors that are controlled by a pre-programmed sequence of movements. So there's like a tiny computer running a sequence of movements. You see this video documentation of it on the screen, made by Studio Couture. And this is an example of an exhibition that is related to the building itself, but it's not about it. So Kindahl based the work to some degree on research or looking into the school's history of teaching needlework and sewing, tailoring, with rooms filled with rows and rows of sewing machines. So you can see the relation both in terms of the textile qualities, but also sort of the electric motors and the sort of repetition and standardization of movements. Another example of an exhibition that we've produced is called Modern Houseplants, Domicilia Plantae Moderna. And it deals with the importance of potted plants to modernist interiors. That once you start thinking about them, they're everywhere. And here they are at
in the interior of the Geisendorf building.
Yeah.
So here you see on the left the entrance, and on the right an old classroom.
So the exhibition consists of identifying the specific plants in the photographs on these archival photographs from the 1960s. And assembling a sort of living botanical reconstruction. So collecting living examples of these species and filling the Monter exhibition space with them. So it becomes a sort of compressed version of all the plant life that was there when the building was first built.
At the moment, we're working on the final touches for an exhibition that will open in the coming weeks. It's our first group exhibition, which is a bit of a challenge in itself, since it needs to fit inside of 1 cubic meter of volume. So this space is not that big. You can fit into it as a grown person, but it's small, so you can't really stand up straight, but you can hunch in the in the volume.
Which you have to do a lot when you're rigging the exhibitions.
The exhibition is called Electric Dreams of Architecture, and it's dealing with how the rise of machine learning and AI algorithms might impact our understanding of architecture history and archival evidence we base that on. So we have invited 4 artists and architects to each engage with one traditional form of architectural representation: the plan, the text, the photograph, and the model.
So it's basically about how does the electric eye of the machine or the robot or the algorithm read architectural history or the traces of architectural history. The architect, so this is a kind of sneak preview. You'll be the first to see some of this material. And the architect Erik Svan has built a neural network which learns from Geisendorf's floor plans. But rather than focusing on the composition as a whole, it focuses on each room as a kind of separate unit. So you see each reading of the floor plan is centered around this red dot, and the work is called You Are Here. And it will be used to generate new rooms, new Geisendorf-like rooms in the plan. And the artist Everest Pipkin has made a program which produces subtitles for the building. So if you would see a film, you would have closed captions or subtitles, and the work of Pipkin is called Open Captions. And it can be seen as a sort of never-ending description of this building in text form, happening in real time. So the subtitles are generated on location, and you will read them as you're on site, like all these projects. The filmmaker Erik Sandberg of Studio Kupol has made generative code from scratch that produces brutalist facades. So this work deals with the representational format of photographs, exterior photographs. And he has based this work on collecting lots and lots of social media images tagged with the label brutalist, just like some people would label this building. But none of these facades exist, of course. They are kind of non-existent, all facades at once, and at the same time, none of them. And the final example from this last exhibition, or the coming exhibition, is the artist and designer Mikhail Falc. So she's printing at the moment a physical model made from a 3D model, which you see an image of on the screen, based on photogrammetry, which is based on digital photographs, which is based on this old wood and paper model, which you already saw. So it's kind of a model of a model of a model, but none of them correspond to how the school was built in the end, because it was never finished to the extent that the architect intended. So that's an additional complicating fact, but you'll have to come see the end result. It's still a work in progress, so hopefully it will make more sense inside the actual Monter cube.
Yeah, and one challenge with producing exhibitions here is that we cannot control the conditions that you control in a gallery setting. Things like the daylight or even moisture or temperature. You know that Sweden's really cold half of the year. So basically we cannot really show stuff that can't take the cold 6 months at a time of the year. So we have to produce a program that can stand heat, the really cold winters of Sweden, and also we can't really show live images when it's too light, because the sun sets here in Stockholm, but it's quite light during the night in the summertime as well.
So it's really dark half the year, but it's also really light half the year. So sometimes, in this instance, for example, we had to spend time there at night to try light conditions for projections and lighting and so on, which caught the attentions of the police patrol, asking what we were doing, but also sort of drunk old men on their way home from a bar, which is a kind of audience for your work that you maybe don't anticipate, but it's there. By the way, he thought that we should definitely make an exhibition with snakes. So we'll have to think about that for a future show. But so the question of audience is quite interesting, and maybe something that we can discuss later as well. But the people who have shown most interest in the project so far, apart from sort of architect colleagues and local architecture students, is on the one hand the kindergarten next door. So we've been invited to actually produce architecture pedagogy for 5-year-olds with them. Or the other sort of main audience is the international architecture scene. So you guys basically, but also other institutions. And we did, for example, get invited to the historic preservation lecture series at GSAP in New York, where we presented a film and exhibition project, which was actually what started off our engagement with this site. And that project is about how this very same building has repeatedly been used as a scenography by the Swedish film industry in the early 2000s, when it was left empty for almost 10 years. So then it was actually seen in lots of mainstream police thrillers and TV series and so on. And yeah, that was what we had prepared for today. Hope it came across okay, and excited to hear Virginia's talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jorge and Karin. Let's pass the mic to Virginia. Perfect.
So, yeah, thank you.
Share.
Perfect. So, full screen mode a little bit. Yeah, yeah. There you are. So, thank you very much, neighbors of architecture, for your presentation. Thank you very much, Pablo and Instituto, for bringing me here. And it is very nice to be the second one, because I already have some ideas, some things that really recall to my project as well. So yeah, I will introduce Presente today. Presente is a project that was born basically 2020, so not long ago. I'm from Spain, so I moved into Porto 2019. So after a year, I decided to start this project. Mainly, I would say that it's a perambulating curatorial experiment. As Paolo has mentioned, is basically about, yeah, like mingling or entangling, like the borders between the disciplines related to exhibition process. Not just, for example, artistic practice and curatorial practice, but for example, design, logistics, and even cleaning. It is very funny to see you guys as well cleaning, because it's one of the parts of the process as well. I have started a kind of tradition of taking pictures of myself cleaning as well. Like curators when I curate, so yeah, cleaning as well. So yeah, I started because why not? I mean, I'm just using here some Jenny Holzer's truisms that really recall to the project. So yeah, Presente is about timing, of course, and it's called Presente for so many reasons that I take this description of the same word. First of all, you have here all the definitions from the Spanish dictionary, but 3 of them are quite important. I will resume it or summary as this fall. For me, Presente is being present. It's about activism somehow as well, because, for example, in Spanish, you can say I'm presente, I'm present, and means you're demonstrating or in a manifestation. So it has to do with this kind of activism as well. And being grateful, because it's about presente in Spanish is a gift. So it's very funny. And of course, it's the temporal world, it's presente, it's now. So everything went together for creating the concept of the gallery. And of course, some other ideas pop up while thinking about how to name it and what sense it will have. Yeah, another one about time. It's not about presentism that I would like to avoid, but present is a little bit different for me. And yeah, the ideas behind it is like, first of all, for me, it was very important to escape the white cube. I'm an artist, I'm a curator, I'm on the white space like mostly all my time, but I know that from people outside the art world, it's very hard to get into the white cube. It's a very aggressive scenario, let's say. So it's not easy to get into it physically, and even of course metaphorically, but even physically it's hard for people to enter in. So for me, Presente was a kind of object that can be open all day long and open in any sense, like physically and of course metaphorically. And then again, I'm really interested in this kind of non-used objects in the city. I'm not an architect myself, but I would say that I would have been an architect if I have this kind of more scientific mentality, but I'm really fascinated by architecture and its processes and ideas. So for me, it was about as well like recovering non-used spaces in the city and even non-artistic spaces in the city. So just like recover places for art, but using art as well for recovering those places. So yeah, I treat the gallery as well as a kind of, you can say like a show, a group show. For me, it's not like individual exhibitions. Everything has to be with a curatorial topic. That is the proto-contemporary. It's a very kind of focused topic about, yeah, it came up with my PhD investigation, and it's about mostly artistic practices that relate to archaeology. So they use methodologies, shapes, processes, forms that relate to archaeology, but somehow they're like artists. So I started this cycle. All the exhibitions are called post-proto. So it's post-proto first, post-proto second, post-proto 3, and there's the cycle going on. I don't know when it will end, but as everything is presented, we will see when it came up. So this was the first space I used. It's funny that you as well use this kind of modern totem of architecture in Stockholm, because this one was as well, it is in Porto, a kind of really known. It's a heritage building. I didn't know. I just cycling by because it was close to my home, and I loved absolutely the building. So I came into the place, knocked the door, and just asked, like, what is this? Can I use it? And it was very nice because the guys behind the owners were architects. And of course, they were like super open to the idea of converting it to a gallery. In the past, this one was kind of, yeah, like related to a ballet school. And it has been used for the last 10 years, so it was completely empty, or they just use it for making advertisement and publicity for the school. So it was very funny to recover the space for this artistic practice. And this was the first exhibition. Sorry, it was September 2020, so not that long ago. funny thing is that even with COVID, I keep on working with the gallery. So because it was all day long open, everybody can go there. You don't have these problems of wearing masks, of we cannot have more than 2 people inside. So it was open space. So it was another virtue, I would say, advantage that I didn't thought about, of course, before the COVID. But then again, it was funny how adapted to the situation, to the pandemic situation. So second exhibition by another, I would say there are like all medium career artists, mainly from Spain, but as well from Portugal. This one is called Jorge Isla, and this one was more completely close to archaeological practices. This one was more about like non-artistic gestures, and it was very funny because you couldn't see the inside of the gallery, and at night it was completely like a light box. This kind of painting is the one that workers, at least in Spain, use while they are doing some works inside, so you don't have to see, or you cannot see what is going on. So it was about visibility, and yeah, museum as well practices this. This was the third one. It's by a architectural studio, very well known in Porto, called Falc, and beautiful project. This is the empty space from a column that they create this mold, but they didn't make anything with the mold. It was just the mold of the void. So we show the void and the mold of the void. Then it was the fourth one about a terrible crime that happened in Spain like a few years ago, a kind of group rape, and this sculpture was mentioning where it happened and what happened. It was a public art, and it was vandalized like 2 days after they put this small sculpture in place, remembering the thing. So it was really hard and really kind of objects, like potent objects. And this was the last one that we did in space by Sema Vekirovic. She's from Albania, I think, but lived in the Netherlands. And it is a video of her touching some sculptures. The funny thing is that till the sculpture are not warm, you don't see them because it's filmed with thermal thermal camera. So the video was, of course, as you mentioned, with the climate and the light, characteristics of the thing. I didn't think about it too well because I put it on summer and we didn't have that much lights of darkness. So it would have been much better to have it in winter, but that's something I learned on the practice. So so it was like looping, like just at the last hours of the evening and all night long. So you don't see anything, you didn't see anything at all by the day, and it activated and reactivated every night. Then as well, we started to publish some like artist books for every exhibition with kind of the same design. And like with a little text about the exhibition, some documentation, in some cases, some works purposely done just for the publication. So for example, this one, in the case of Antonio, this wasn't in the gallery, but he created it as well for the book. And for example, from the QR code that you have on the montra, on the window shop, you can just download the text and read about it. For example, I used to do it every exhibition. And this is the newest space. It's a completely different part of the city. It's the opposite side of the city. It's much bigger than the first one, even though it's a micro gallery. You were mentioning that we are micro, but for me, 1 meter more is like, wow, this is super big. What am I going to do with so much space? Because this one is 3 meters and something, and 150. The other one used to do less than 2. So it's more than 1 meter. And for me, it was like, okay, this is getting big. But it's everything in comparison is like super small. And this was the exhibition that we've done. you have this picture because it was like just on the mounting process. We opened the exhibition like 3 days ago. So yeah, just now. And this is the work of another two Spanish artists that they create these pieces by tearing down parts of walls of a house. The house was from an anarchist thinker from the Civil War in Spain, and he was hidden inside the walls. He was discovered by the police. He was shot dead, and his wife as well. And what the artist did was basically just tearing down all the walls around the house by stratas. For example, the left piece that you see is the first strata, and the right one is the second strata. So they were able to just recreate by layers all of this. So it's completely hanged. The wall piece is 504 pieces, so it's huge. So I just mounted a small amount of them. And yes, I mean, I take these pictures with me because when I used to live in Madrid, it's my home city, I started this project called Sandwich Mixto, that is basically like torrada mixta, I guess. Yeah, it's like a ham grill sandwich, and it was on a food market, and we put there a printing business, like a small publication shop, and events of all class and condition. For example, I was teaching my university classes there. I was there like 6 years. You can imagine the difference between like the guys being here like fishmongers and meat makers and I don't know, like herbs and milk things. So I was in the middle of a food traditional market. It was very fun. I was there like 6 years. And again, it was as well to take out from the white cube. You can see my obsession there, like my continuation of the same ideas, like taking art out of ghetto or artistic spaces and out of the white space, like playing with the popular as well, playing with the view, like everybody can join there. It was kind of a public space, even though when it was closed, you can still see everything inside. So, I mean, yeah, this came somehow from here, even though this one is like more art related, the other one was more like cultural related. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.